Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to All Together, the Family Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargent. Now, let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to All Together, the Family Science Insights podcast. And today, I'm here instead of Dina because she has a little situation that she needs to take care of. And I believe that is totally okay. The most important thing is we're here. And today we're here with one of our co-hosts at LMSL. We're here with Aditi. Family is my favorite topic to talk about. I don't talk about it very often because I don't host the show as much as Dina does. But today is my chance to do it. I'm very excited. How are you today, Aditi?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day outside.
It's really nice outside.
I'm feeling
I cannot wait to take my laptop out on the balcony and do my next meeting. That will be fun. So I don't know how to introduce you per se because, you know, we've been working together for a while. And I know you as a colleague and I know what you like and don't like. But as a person, I'm keen to hear how you would introduce yourself. How would you introduce yourself as a human?
That's a good one. Because I was just going to introduce myself by the podcast that I host at LMSL.
No, but who are you really?
Who am I really? Great question. I wish I knew. I am currently a podcast host. I also work as a head of content at Sari Collective, which is a South Asian Australians representing ideas. I will get that right one day. Where we talk about a lot of like South Asian Australian issues, which is really nice. I'm also studying, unfortunately, part-time screen production and journalism, which is really exciting. That's what I do for work. What I do for fun is changing every single day. I feel like I find a new hobby every week or every month or so. Right now I am rewatching the entire Pokemon anime.
Oh,
from scratch.
I just started.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I just started.
Yeah. In which language are you watching it in?
English.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I'm very new to it, but
give me your updates because I'm abnormally into Pokemon. So
well, the thing that has happened recently is like my best friend made me watch it, and then I was like, okay, this is new to me. Like I don't know anything about it, and then we had a conversation. And I just started to Clefairy him. So instead of talking, I was just like, Clefairy, how are you? Clefairy, are you okay? Clefairy.
That's a vibe.
Yeah, it's a vibe. Like it's really great. It's a great intro to the podcast. And thank you again for being here. It's going to be fun. It's fun already. I think the topic that we're going to talk about today is really close to both of us because we're away from our extended family. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm away from my whole family, but you're away from your extended family. Mm-hmm. It's like a long distance relationship that you have with them. So I'm really keen to hear from you because we're talking about living apart from extended family. And I've heard some of your stories, but today we're going to dig deeper into that. Before we get into it, we normally do the Have You Met Someone section. Have you met Aditi? And today I am doing this with you for the first time, I believe.
Yes. That is correct.
I don't think I've asked you these questions.
Yeah.
I haven't had you on my shows yet. That's interesting. By the way, I'm hosting 2 other shows at LMSL. One is for happiness and the other one is for well-being. And what other shows are you hosting, Aditi?
I am hosting personal science and relationship science. So Self-Improvement Atlas and Reloscope. That's the other one.
I love those 2 shows so much because like the concept, the names, like the different topics. I was like, oh, I'm so enlightened. Anyways, first of all, what is a book you would recommend to our audience?
So I guess a book I would recommend is one I'm actually reading right now. It's called The Once and Future Sex, and it's by Eleanor Janega, who is a doctor in medieval history, and it's about medieval gender roles and women's roles historically, and it kind of compares that to today and how we view women and gender today, and how much it's both changed and stayed similar over time, and also clears up a lot of our misconceptions around how we viewed like medieval sexism and medieval gender roles and that kind of thing. It's really interesting. I've learned so much. The things that we associate with progress were already in place like 1,000 years ago, but it's only very recently that those rights were kind of reversed and that we're trying to fight for them back again. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is super cool. I've never heard about that book before.
It just came out at the start of this year, and I'm a big fan of the historian, so I bought it.
Cool.
Nonfiction books are difficult for me to read quickly.
Yeah.
So it takes me a long time. But
Same.
yeah.
But sometimes when they're really good, you just go through them so quickly as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's really good. I think in general, it's just nonfiction. I need to take little breaks and read something pulpy and silly in the middle.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it just takes me a bit of time.
Love that. And next one, you know what it is. What is a movie you would like to talk about today?
So many movies I would like to talk about. I'm going to stick to two. One that just came out, not just came out last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it, because like, what are you doing?
So beautiful.
Two, a movie that I've been excited over today that was just announced, Paddington 3. It's my end game.
Aw, it's your end game.
It's my Snyder cut.
Aw, it's your Thanos snap.
Yeah. It's my big movie event that I'm looking forward to. I'm also getting my outfit ready for the Barbie movie premiere. So
the Barbie movie, they have that
coming out in July, and it's got Margot Robbie. It's the director of Little Women.
Oh my gosh,
Ryan Gosling as Ken.
That is so not my style, but I'm very keen to dress up as a Barbie. That's gonna be fun. Definitely. You gotta send me your outfit inspo, and I'm gonna.
I will. I've already bought the sweater. I'm ready.
I'm gonna find something that I can wear to represent the Barbies. I used to love them at one point.
Me too. I was
obsessed.
I had the books and everything.
Yeah.
The movies.
All right. So you host a podcast. What's your favorite podcast?
Out of the two?
No, in general.
In general. Well, if you watch some of the... I've been on the productivity and resilience shows, and I recommended a bunch on there, so I don't want to repeat them.
Yeah.
One I've been listening to lately that I really like is called If Books Could Kill, which looks at kind of a bunch of like pop science books that have kind of come out, the kind of thing that you've heard people talk about and you might see at an airport bookstore, and you'll pick it up because you don't have anything to read while you're on the flight. That are kind of based on pseudoscience or just not well researched, books like that, and it kind of just goes through chapter by chapter and debunks a lot of things that are in it. That one's really cool. Yeah. If Books Could Kill is what it's called.
That's cool. Yeah. Wow. You know all the cool stuff. I love it. And who's your role model? Could be a famous person, could be, your personal role model. Who would that person be?
Difficult. Yeah, that's a very tough question. Personal role model. I really like, I'm really into movies, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's surprising.
My favorite director is also someone I look up to personally, in terms of, even though like directing is not necessarily something I'm going to do immediately in life, maybe one day. I really like her just approach to her art. Chloe Zhao. She directed Nomadland. She works with a lot of real people and tries to represent things in this kind of semi-real way that doesn't quite romanticize things, but it doesn't quite make it all gritty and sad and upsetting either. She often works with non-actors. So she will write a fictional story in a fictional script, but get people with the lived experience to act out these scripts.
Oh.
as much as possible. Nomadland is a bit of a deviation from that, and that the main character was played by Frances McDormand, but a lot of the kind of significant side characters, I don't know if you've seen Nomadland. No. Okay. Very, very quickly summarize it. But it's basically after the global financial crisis, a group of people decide to just live off their vans and take small jobs and kind of live around the country. And it's both a financial necessity, but also kind of a liberating thing that they don't have to participate in like just life and capitalism anymore. It's kind of, they're separate from that. And it's a real community of people that exists. So a lot of those people were in the movie playing themselves, but as characters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
fascinating.
There's so many stories of how she handles these people very sensitively. Hollywood is not known for handling things sensitively, but she often makes sure that they retain their humanity in the process and their agency, which I really, really admire.
I love that. Beautiful. I'm going to have to research her and her movies for sure.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're
and now I'm
movies.
thinking about how I'm going to play my own like character.
Exactly.
You know, if I were in a movie about me, like how would I play it? Like,
well, you would have to be directed really well for that to happen. Especially if you
but then
haven't
like how do you remember what happened? Like how do you remember how you carried yourself?
Yeah, that's true.
You know, like
that's true.
Last year I don't remember, like let alone 5 years ago. Like how am I
don't
going to
remember
do
what
that?
happened last week.
Exactly. How am I going to do that? It's really interesting of a concept. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And last question. What's the course you've completed that you would like to talk about?
I'm currently trying to complete a course.
Yeah, you can talk about that as well if you want.
So currently completing a course in screen production and journalism. Both very, very interesting, both very intensive. And hopefully it's been really cool because this podcast work is really relevant to both of them, which has been really nice.
Nice.
To put
I
that
love
into
that.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your recommendations and things that we didn't know before. I definitely learned at least 5 new things today. So that was cool. Now let's go into the part where we talk about extended family. Now this is very interesting. I'm going to participate in this conversation as much as you do because I have quite a few things on my mind as well. But I wonder what your take is. But first of all, what is your personal definition of family?
Yeah, that's a tough one because obviously there's the biological family, the people that you grew up with. I feel that that's what I would define as one way to define family for me. And coming from the culture that I come from, there's a lot of value placed in that community of people that you grew up with. Don't necessarily have to be related to them biologically. In my case, I was. But I know within my family, there will be, you know, neighbors that are included that are very close to us. In my case, my mum's brothers, in-laws, I consider them to be part of my family because I interacted with them so much growing up. They were there for some really key moments in my life. So I consider them to be part of my family, even though I'm not biologically blood related to them and have no real typical familial obligation to consider them so. But for me personally, you know, my friends have been just as involved in defining who I am as my biological family. So I would count my friends as part of my family as well.
Yeah.
Personally. That's not really relevant to this episode, but that's just the way I see it, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be relevant to the episode because it's your personal definition. And we'll talk about extended family as well. And you know what? I'm going to challenge that because I think it is related to the episode. We're talking about extended family, and for a lot of us, it's kind of like this space. I don't know about you, but for a lot of us, when I talk to my friends, it's like this weird space you have to navigate because you're family, but sometimes not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do influence you to a certain extent, and you do receive love, and you try to give love as much as you can. But at the same time, it's a very hard dynamic to navigate because there's a gap in terms of expectations.
Yeah.
I feel, especially with the generational gap, you know. And maybe it's different for the previous generation compared to our generation, and it will be even more different to, you know, with the next generation following us. But I find it to be fascinating whenever this topic comes up because I also personally don't know how to deal with extended family sometimes. Yeah. I love them, but to me, it's easier to love them from afar.
I very much agree with that. And I feel like we'll have so much to say about that. Like, I love my extended family. I've spent a lot of time with them growing up. And I know, especially on my mum's side, she values them very, very much. And I know that if I were to lose touch with them in the future, even if I moved out of home, etc., she would be pretty upset about that. So how I interact with my extended family affects my nuclear family as well. But yeah, I agree. The distance is really important. And I like what you said about like not being sure how to fully deal with them. It's like, because it's like there's this gap, right? In that, it's your uncle or your second uncle or your second cousins, whatever, third cousins. And they still give you their opinion because like you are part of the same family, essentially. You're all in the family WhatsApp group. But it's like, should you follow that advice? And it's almost like this weird neighborhood, like peer, I don't know the best way to phrase this, but it's like, that high school dynamic of like, when people just have things to say and it has nothing to do with them, but they want to give their opinion anyway. It kind of almost feels like that sometimes. And it's weird to have to listen to someone and not quite listen to them either, or not take them seriously. Like there's a very tense and blurry line there with extended family.
Yeah, totally. Which is why now let's talk about the relationships, because, it's such an interesting topic. And the first thing that comes out of it is obviously the relationship you have with them. As you just said, it's also hard to navigate the dynamic. So how do you maintain relationships with your extended family, especially since you live far away from them? And also for our audience who don't know anything about your background, maybe you can share a little bit about that so it gives them more context.
Yeah. Well, being Asian, you would understand this as well. Extended family is pretty much almost equal to your immediate family. So for a lot of people, we are lucky enough to have just grown up with them. So traditionally we all live in the same household. That might not be the case for a lot of the newer generations. Definitely not for my generation. But I guess for like my personal context, for example, I never lived in the same city as some of my extended family, so my grandparents and all of that. But we were always in the same country and we used to visit them a lot. I remember, especially my mum's side of the family. My dad's side of the family were mostly overseas, so we didn't get to see them as much. But my mum's side of the family, my maternal grandparents, I used to visit them every summer. I would spend the entire summer with them. Essentially, school would close and I'd hang around for maybe a few weeks. Then I'd head off to stay with them. So my happiest memories are like spending summer with them. My maternal grandparents and also my mum's brother, my mum's older brother and his family as well. So I considered them to be very close to me. My cousin from that side of the family was like an older sister to me growing up. And it's kind of, that's very natural, I think, to a lot of Asian families. Like that's replicated quite often across various Asian cultures, really. So that's kind of the context I'm coming from. In terms of how I keep in touch with them, I wish I could say I was better at it. I do have direct contact when needed with most of my extended family, and this includes, so my grandma had like, 8 siblings or something, or like 10 siblings, a lot of siblings. My grandfather also had, I think, around 6. This is just my mom's side of the family. That's not even including my dad's side. So I have a lot of second cousins, a lot of them that my mom grew up with and was very close to. Some of them might be cousins, some of them might be aunts. I don't know for sure. They might be more related to my grandma. I really don't know. But like, I have direct contact with these people. I don't often initiate contact myself because I'm used to contacting them via my parents.
Yeah.
And a lot of that might just be the fact that I'm still living at home with my family. There's no like need for me to directly talk to them Often when I do, it's when my parents are sick and need taking care of. So then they'll text me and ask me, like, are they okay? Like, do you need any help looking after them? Which they can't really help being overseas. And we'll talk, I think, a little about that later too. But just kind of like, do you want to call and like, we'll talk you through things, that kind of thing. I am in touch with my cousin, I think the one that is like a sister to me. But even that is like, a lot of the time we'll FaceTime. And instead of like text each other regular, so we'll FaceTime maybe like around birthdays and important festivals and that kind of thing. It doesn't feel like, there's a gap despite how little we communicate. But most of it, my mum will call my grandma like once a week. So I will just pop in, say hello, chat for a while, and then pop out. And applies to pretty much all my extended family that she'll contact. Same with my dad and his extended family.
Yeah.
It used to be easier before the pandemic because we used to go back almost every year.
Yeah. I hear you.
But I have not been back since the early 2020.
Yeah, I think we talked about this at one point and you were like, yeah, it's been so long since you last visited your extended family.
Yeah.
I think for you it's a bit different from me, but still like it's like still that factor of living away from your extended family is kind of this interesting dynamic because like I don't know about you, but for me, like I'm really close to them. I was really close to them growing up and like so close that we would hang out a lot, because I'm especially close to my mom's side of the family and we have frequent hangouts and every weekend someone would come over, especially because, we live with grandpa and grandma. So it's like a norm. It's very normal for me to hang out with my extended family. And fast forward 22 years later, I decided to move across the globe to another country. And now I don't hang out with anyone from my family. The only people I would call would be my mom, my dad, and occasionally some of my cousins. Yeah. That's it. And I don't really have contacts with aunties and uncles anymore. And I feel like there's still that relationship because for me, it's different from you. It's like you visit them every year before. For me, I basically grew up with them. And it's like a dynamic that was so different compared to now because now we barely talk and, every now and again I would check in. And just like you, I'd probably talk to my mom and then through her talk to them if they're on the line by any chance. But if not, then no, because, I don't live with my family anymore. And it's like this interesting space to navigate because we still have a relationship. But I feel like a lot of it now is based on hearsay. Like, oh, like I know she's doing this and that. Like I know she's living there, blah, blah. And I would know stuff about them that way as well. Like, oh, like I know that they're doing this and that through my mom. Not direct conversations, not hanging out like before, not spending quality time together or anything. But for me, personally, it's actually easier that way to maintain the love for them. Because when I'm too close to them, sometimes it creates a lot of friction. Yeah. In a really bad way. And it affects me. It affects my mental health because we have really different opinions and values. And I know this is very personal. It's not based on research or anything like that. But still, like I think it's a very big factor in this generation, especially for first gen, second gen migrants. Like it's like this whole dynamic that has changed or a new thing that you have to navigate if you want to maintain that relationship. And you know what? I do. Yeah. And I think you do too. It's probably just how, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that first generation, second generation migrant is such a huge thing because like for you moved at 22, but you're already feeling that difference, right? Yeah. Of just moving overseas, changing the relationship. Because for me, like I moved when I was 11. So my entire personality is defined by the fact that I am a diaspora kid. I'm living away from my country of origin. And that has changed my relationship with my family who are still in the homeland for the most part. Yeah. So much. And like I come from, at least, on my mum's side of the family, a progressive family. But even then there's like so many differences, so many things that I just know I could never talk to them about. Yeah. Around things like mental health, around things like sexuality, that like it's just not worth the conversation. And
absolutely, I hear you.
Really glad sometimes that I have moved away so that I can continue to have a good relationship with them. Yeah. And also be able to keep things to myself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? That is actually related to family culture. Because each family would have its own culture. Depending on whether they value these kinds of conversation or not, you're going to find yourself very comfortable or very uncomfortable mentioning it. I know for a fact that my family is a really traditional family, and our values, our culture are very much traditional, in terms of the Vietnamese culture where I'm from. So I wonder what you think about this, because obviously the family culture would affect your relationship with your extended family. Definitely the case for me. And I wonder how that works for you and your family.
Yeah, so I've got a very mixed family in terms of what they value. I definitely get along with the family members that have more progressive values, and they tend to be in my generation. There are definitely some in my parents' generation that are kind of also a bit more aligned. Again, there's a lot of things that I just won't talk to them about. Like, I'm not even going to try or experiment and see what they think, because I just don't think it's worth the trouble. I don't want my opinion to change of them, just in case it ends up being different. But yeah, I definitely, values makes a huge difference in how much I want to continue to interact with some members of my family, and how often as well. My dad's side of the family is relatively conservative, and I love them. But my grandma did tell me at 19 that I should start looking for a husband. So I'm like, we'll not talk about marriage with you. Yeah. Like, that's a conversation I'm not having with you anymore. I love her to bits. She's very dear to me, and I think my grandmas, my grandfathers on both sides of my family have passed away. But my grandmas are both don't share my values, but very, very dear to me, very precious. But yeah, definitely things that I avoid talking about with them, and definitely in some cases glad that distance exists to a certain extent. I think I'm grateful though that, like, there are people in my family that I can definitely talk to and trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what does it have to do with your family culture though? Because I know you've mentioned like the factor of, your different grandparents are, kind of different in their ways, but in terms of the family culture, how would you define that in terms of the relationship building? Because for me, right, like in my family, the culture is we need to be really tight knit. Like, we just have to be tight knitted. Like, we have to hang out every week. Yeah. We have to stay in touch. We have to have a family group chat. It's kind of like it's really interesting. It's kind of like an organizational culture where you have to like celebrate all the birthdays and like, organize catch-ups and have budgets and KPIs for things you're going to do together as an extended family. And to me, like that culture, it's really important, because without that I would feel a little bit disconnected from them, especially because I live away from home. And with that, sometimes I'm just like, oh, like these are the updates, and they do share updates frequently, just kind of like a board meeting, like you see all that. You see all the updates from the extended family. So that was really nice. I don't partake as much in such conversations, but it keeps me in the loop, and I'm like, oh, like these are people that are related to me, and I'm happy to see them happy. And I know what's going on with them, and I know that they care about my mom when I'm away. Again, I'm still talking about my mom's side because I'm closer to them. So see, that's an example of family culture, a little bit like an organizational culture, I would say. But that's my case. So how about your family culture?
What you were describing is very, very familiar to me on my mom's side of the family as well. So for context, my mom grew up with her cousins from both sides of the family, and aunts, some of whom were closer to her age, all pretty much in the same building or in the same neighborhood. She's very, very close with them. So for them, that tight-knit kind of staying close, staying in touch, calling each other constantly is super, super important for them. And as a part of that family, I am also, like, a lot of them were there to witness my birth. A lot of them were there for like my earliest birthday parties and all of that. And my grandma is the matriarch of the family. So a lot of them congregate around where she lives and come visit. So every time I'm visiting back home, other family members tend to be there because they're always just coming in to say hello if they're in town. So that's very tight knit. I don't know if we have KPIs and budgets. But trying to get, like I said, many siblings together it's a process. It's a whole thing. Requires a ridiculous amount of organization and the planning for food.
Oh my gosh. I hear you. Same.
It's crazy.
It is.
But we manage somehow. Also just finding free time. So that's another thing. Like we were talking about generational differences. Back in India, the younger generations work a lot more. I'm talking people who are currently now in their 30s, maybe early 40s, work a lot more than and longer hours than maybe their parents did.
Yeah.
So trying to find days that they're free to come in for dinner and like getting everyone kind of together, that's a whole thing. But everyone is dedicated to making it happen in a way that I don't think would be the case if we weren't family.
Yeah.
My dad's side of the family is a very different story, mainly because he grew up traveling around the country. So they're used to having remote relationships. So we communicate with family Zoom calls. That's a ritual. That's like really important. Right now, literally, I think almost every member of the family is in a different country.
Oh my gosh.
We've got someone studying in Poland. We've got people in Nigeria, some back in India, some in Dubai. So trying to like get time zones together for a family Zoom call is like, that's another exercise. So it's less tight knit, but it's more accepting of the fact that sometimes that distance can just cause long gaps in speaking, and you just have to like continue to catch up where possible. I don't know if that makes sense. But
it does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. I think that's interesting because each family is very different, right? Like I know that there are families that just don't hang out with their extended family.
Yeah.
I know my friends' families, for example, their extended family is extremely troublesome. Like it's just really dysfunctional. So I'm very grateful that my extended family has a really great culture.
Yeah.
With great KPIs and budgets. No, jokes aside.
That are all agreed on.
Jokes aside, it's really great to have a good family culture in the sense of, you know, like valuing each other and really putting in the effort to stay close and stay in touch. Especially for aunties and uncles who are a little bit older, you know, they appreciate this even more because, you know, in a way that's their community and, you know, like they have friends and they have connections, but nothing trumps family.
Yeah,
still.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. Like personally, I'm really close to some of my cousins, like more than anybody else, and I really appreciate what we have because I don't have siblings per se. Like I have a half brother, but I don't ever talk to him. So to me, like having cousins that I can really talk to, that's precious. Like they're like my brothers rather than just cousins. So that's really, really awesome.
I totally get that.
And, you know, like this is going to be very interesting because going into the next questions, whenever there's a family disagreement, we would stand on the sideline together and kind of observe it because we're of the next generation. And for me, like I'm not involved in disagreements directly, but whenever that happens, it's good to have someone you can share your thoughts with or just, you know, be there with you to kind of discuss it or observe it together because you don't want to repeat the same thing for your generation, right?
Agreed.
So for me, like, it's like, okay, I don't have to deal with the situation directly, but I know what's going on and I can support, for example, my mom or my auntie or my uncle when there are disagreements and I know what is right and what is wrong. So throwing back to you, how do you deal with that? How do you overcome disagreements and misunderstandings in your family, in your extended family?
I'm like you in that I've never been directly involved. There have definitely been disagreements. Honestly, like growing up, I was very unaware of them. I think my parents did their utmost best to make sure that I was in the dark about a lot of these things. Now that I'm an adult, I'm a bit more in the know. I think it's interesting because of the way my parents have handled it and allowed me to develop relationships with some of these people without knowing that there was kind of drama happening in the background. I can now come to my own conclusions, and that's, I think, really nice. I'm grateful to my parents for allowing me to do that. I don't know if it was intentional on their part or not. I know that like often when they will recant drama to me, they will give me their side of the story and tell me their thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of like, I'm like, okay, I know what you think, but let me take a step back and like kind of figure out what I know. I do have like a couple of cousins that I probably could talk about, but I'm going to be honest, I've never been in the situation where I've had to directly address it. I've kind of just observed and like kept it to myself. Yeah. Because I've just never been involved enough to like need to support anyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
It's never kind of gotten to that point. Yeah, we don't have any direct disputes. I think like my parents, my immediate family don't have any direct disputes with anyone. So that doesn't seem to be the case. And in the case of, my mum and her older brother, they're very close and they value each other a lot. So I don't see, touch wood, I don't see anything happening between them soon. But even so, that would be very strange because he again, summers at their place all the time. Like his daughter is like an older sister to me. You were saying, you don't really have any siblings. I was an only child for the first 7.5 years of my life. So my brother came along. She and her brother were my siblings.
Yeah.
They were what I had. Yeah, so
totally.
It would be strange, but I think that we would be able to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you talked about that, I suddenly realized that there was this point in my life where there were disagreements and misunderstandings and things happening directly with me and the cousin generation actually, and it was pretty sad because I didn't mention this, but I have a cousin who used to be my best friend. So you can figure it's no longer happening. And there was a period where I had to navigate this dynamic because it became distant and then it became weird and then it became nothing. And then I had to navigate through all of that. And I'm just kind of like, now I'm actually handling this relationship by myself because it's not like a disagreement within the family where it's just aunties and uncles are involved. Yeah, this is me directly. And also in this scenario, our parents are kind of like us in the other scenario. They're just observing and there's nothing they can do about it. Yeah. It's just showing the support, right? So for me, I think how I would normally approach this is to seek support and to provide the support as well. Now that I think about it, because I cannot handle whatever my mom's going through with her brothers and sisters and the in-laws. Yeah. But I can show her my point of view and I can show her my support. And that's what I did. Because a lot of the times little things happen and they, just like your family, they don't tell you because they wanted to protect you from the dramas and whatever's going on. And then I have to slowly figure it out and slowly learn to be the adult in the family and just show the support. And actually, sometimes I actually sit my mom down and be like, do you know how ridiculous this is right now? And this is how I would deal with it and overcome all of these things by showing support and just take it one step at a time, really, because sometimes you can save the relationship and sometimes you cannot save the relationship at all. Yeah. So, yeah, I think sometimes you have to be the bigger person, especially because it's an extended family kind of a situation. But in other scenarios where people are really particular or they're kind of like strong and really opinionated, it's hard. So overall, I would say like to overcome it, for me, it's been really helpful to just take a step back and observe and ask for help where I can, where I cannot. I handle it by myself. And when there's a disagreement within the family that I'm not directly involved in and I need to show the support, I will. But I don't want it to be like gossipy. you know? So it's just like I observe and I share my opinion with whoever is directly involved that is close to me if they need me. If not, then it's better to just stay away from it.
Do you feel that, and this is kind of, I guess, what I've observed just from my family, but do you feel that the fact that you all grew up together make the infighting a little bit more intense? Because you had this kind of very close relationship and then suddenly there's a bit of a betrayal of trust.
Yeah, I would say so. Especially from my mom and her siblings. Because a lot of the time when the in-laws are involved, it gets complicated. And I think this is like a very complex dynamic, because on the one hand you have siblings, on the other hand you have partners who are in-laws to the siblings, and which side do you choose? I've never been in such a situation because I'm very single. But you know, like when I think about it, I will probably have to deal with that in the future. Maybe,
yeah.
If I do decide to partner up. And that will be really complicated, because how do you deal with it? As I said, if I can participate and if it's directly related to me, I will do my part, explain my side of the story. If not, I'll show support to the people that need the support. And if it's just irrelevant, probably just best to walk away from the situation and distance yourself from it.
Yeah, I think in-laws definitely make things very complicated, because I know my mum has a lot of stories from when she first got married, but by the time I was conscious enough to kind of make out family dynamics, I didn't notice anything that was going wrong. So maybe it was just like the birth of a child kind of creating a bit of a shift, or it had just mellowed out by the time I was old enough.
Yeah.
But because now that there's no kind of active disputes or anything at the moment. Thankfully. But I know things like, you know, inheritance, which touch wood hasn't happened in my family yet.
Yeah.
But from what I know from friends' families and the stories I hear from them about their extended families, it can get very vicious even amongst
it is.
people who used to be very close.
It is. Yeah. It can be.
Those aren't even, well, depends on what. I see those kind of jokes online all the time of like people going back to actually see the land they're disputing on, and it's like 4 square meters with a tree on it. But I get it, you know, it's kind of a family heirloom almost, or even just something that you feel belongs to you that is kind of taken away, and it can get quite intense, you know. Sometimes there are smaller disputes, but sometimes there are really, really big ones that are over property and heirlooms and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, you're reminding me of all the past stuff that's happened. I was like, whoa. I didn't know about any of that, by the way. I just found out later on because I was a child back then.
Me too. I found out later on as well.
Yeah, but this is how it's good to actually learn before it happens to you, because this might happen to you in the future. It might happen to me in the future. Who knows?
It's very likely. I feel like it happens to most people.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know, because I haven't been in a situation where it's really intense yet, but I can kind of sense that it might come about if anything were to happen, and you don't know when. It's not like you're prepared for it and there's like a timeline where you can be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to deal with the situation right now. It's family, you know, things happen. So for me, it's like this, it's an interesting dynamic that I have to navigate, and seems like you do too. I wonder what people normally do, you know, like, so I don't know if anyone is interested in the topic and participate in the conversation, but I would very much like to hear
if anyone has tips
comments
on good ways to deal with inheritance disputes.
Yeah,
let us know, because like that stuff's torn like siblings apart. I mean, touch wood. My grandma in her will, like, she discussed her will with us, and she said that she was, again, context. So I come from a family and a culture that's matrilineal. So property is passed down through the mother to mother, like mother to daughter, etc. So my grandma being the matriarch of the family means that it should pass to my mum, who's the oldest daughter, and then to me. But she is choosing to pass it to my uncle, like her kind of possessions. And that was something she discussed with us beforehand. So like, we're like, you know what, fine. Like, we don't really value it as much anyway. And it makes a lot more sense because he's in the country and we're not.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's very different because like as I said, I don't have siblings per se, and I'm the only child from my mom, and our family has nothing. So inheritance is really just not an issue. For me, it's mainly like I'm just building my life here, and I would very much like some space. And I think the most I'm trying to find a nice word. The most challenging thing is to navigate those conversations about like, when are you getting married? Boundaries. From extended family. So yeah, creating boundaries and just really like have some distance, because I visited my family recently and it was so intense because I love them, but not to see them every day, and it's like, it's the same conversation repeated 5 times over. And it's not like I'm going to get married after talking to you,
Whenever we go home, it's usually around 3 weeks to a month at a time, and by week 3 I'm like, I want to go home. I'm tired. I love you people, but I want to go home. For me, it's not so much marriage, it's more, I've taken a very long time to graduate from uni. In fact, I'm still attempting it. Still going.
You go, girl. You've got this.
I started in 2013 and I'm still like trying to get myself a degree. I've had a lot of mental health issues that are very difficult to communicate to my extended family in order to explain why it's taken me so long to get a degree, because growing up, I was a smart child. So that conversation is always really difficult to navigate every time I go home. And it also doesn't help that I'm doing something new almost every time that I return. It hasn't helped that the one time I've been consistent has been when we've been in a pandemic and I haven't been able to return and go home at any point. So those are conversations that probably in hindsight make me reluctant to kind of start conversations with them as well, because I know it'll probably go down that route, because that's what culturally we care about, work and what people are doing with themselves and financial stability. So yeah, like for you, it's like the marriage conversation, which I know will happen to me one day, even though I've been very clear about the fact that I'm not really interested in marriage and it might not be something I'll ever do. But it's more like, when are you going to graduate? What are you studying? What are your career options? I'm like, please just let me like do my best in the present right now. Like, those are conversations that are stressing me out. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about me.
Yeah.
And also, this might be something you're used to as well, but the undiagnosed anxiety that is in your extended family that you can see, because like you have the diagnosed version of it. And you can't tell them because they're like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, this is just normal.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot in terms of the dynamic, because, like if we were to talk about like mental health issues or, like the progressive sides of the family and whether they are progressive or not, I have many stories to tell. But I think it's time to come to a conclusion, because we've talked about this dynamic quite a bit. So I think from my perspective, the most important question I want to ask you right now, given all that you've shared with us, is how have your experiences with your extended family shaped who you are today?
Look, it is because my extended family has been so wonderful overall, that I am who I am today. It's not just my immediate family, but my extended family, who have just kind of given me free rein to be myself. Like, they've never pressured me into doing anything, like maybe apart from just doing as well as I can in my studies, but they've never tried to push me into a career path. They've never given me the idea that because I'm a woman, I can't do specific things. The marriage question has probably come up once or twice from conservative sides of my family, but for the most part, the people that I interact with the most don't pressure me as much about those things. So I'm really, really lucky, because I know a lot of people who are my age and within the same culture and have very similar dynamics to their extended family don't have those privileges. So I think that me being a very independent thinker and doing my own thing and feeling confident enough to do my own thing is owed to that attitude that both my immediate family and my extended family have. So yeah, that's my conclusion.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's interesting because it's good to know that you have such a great extended family that would that had this positive influence on you. You know, and I think for me too, because it's a really nice reminder. Like, I think each family is very unique, whether it be nuclear or extended, and who you are is definitely shaped by your experiences with these individuals, because you would have been growing up with them, and the whole process of you from being a child to being an adult. So many things must have happened.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful because I know that for a lot of my friends, it hasn't always been easy. Extended family can be extremely difficult. So for me, and what I'm hearing from you as well, is it's great for our extended family overall.
Yeah.
They've been good influences. And I think for me too, you know, like, I love the culture that we have, and it shapes me up to be who I am today. You know, like, I love frequent hangout with friends, and I have rituals with friends, and I have, like, you know, like, things that I would do for them, like family, thanks to the things that, you know, my extended family did for me and for my nuclear family. So I think it's just a really nice reminder to think about your extended family if you're living away from them. I think not everyone is in the same situation as we are.
Yeah.
However, maybe there's a point in their lives where this might happen.
Yes.
It might not be in another country, but, you know, like, lots of people move from city to city, and it just changes the whole dynamic. So this might be a really good thing to think about, because the dynamic that we have with our extended families, it's just going to be with us forever. So it's up to us to decide what we want to do with it.
There's one anecdote I want to share about my extended family that
Totally.
I feel really sums up both my love for them and their love for me. Yeah. My grandfather passed away the day before my 11th birthday. And something that my extended family, who had all obviously come in for the funeral, which was on my birthday, something that they just collectively decided to do was make sure that I had a good birthday, despite everything. So my uncle's in-laws took me out for the day. And I kind of wish I had gone to my grandfather's funeral, but at the same time, I really, really appreciate that they took the time to make sure that I wasn't bogged down, regardless. And I think that really sums up, like, despite all of the barriers, the things that I can't talk to them about, they have my best interests at heart. And I think that that's something that when you come from a community-oriented family, you just carry on to other people as well.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. I didn't have the words for it, but it's a community-oriented family sort of culture. Totally. I really love that. And yeah, it's a bit sad that happened to you, but I'm also glad that you learned about the value of your extended family through that experience. And I think we are all gonna go through some things in life. We don't know when, we don't know how, but the power of the extended family is gonna show, you know, especially if you have a really strong one. If you happen to have a not so great one, it's also okay, because you can build your extended family as well. Don't forget that.
I'm so glad you kept speaking, because I literally was about to say RIP if you have a bad extended family. I was like, oh, it's just upsetting, I think.
It is, but I think we can choose our extended family too, just like you said earlier, right? Because
our friends.
You can direct your attention to your friends. If you feel like it's not a great environment, you can distance yourself from it.
Yeah. And those boundaries are important regardless of how close to your family you are.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Cool. Well, those are all the questions. I think we can keep talking about this topic all day.
Literally forever.
Because like there's so much to talk about, and things will start to come out. But let's wrap it up with open mic. We don't have practice because this is not an expert-led podcast for the day. We're just here to have fun.
Did I forget?
Today.
I have a PhD in extended family, actually. I forgot to mention that at the start of the episode.
Unfortunately, you don't have such a thing. But it's been really fun to talk about it. And I think it's one thing to hear expert opinions. It's another thing to hear stories. Because I do believe in the power of stories. They shape who we are. And it's good to hear stories from other people as well. Not to compare yourself, but to get perspectives. You know, because I feel like when you said that you're grateful for your extended family, I was like, yeah, me too, actually. I didn't think about it as much, but I am. Anyways, here's your open mic. Here's your chance to talk about anything you want to talk about. Doesn't have to be about the topic. I'm sure you have some things to share, so take it away.
Yeah, I feel like I wasted my anecdote. I probably should have put that in the open mic instead. But I want to talk about my cousin for a while. She is kind of, I grew up with her. She was like an older sister to me. And she's, I think, probably my main point of contact with my extended family at the moment. Even when we're not texting, we have each other on Be Real. So I'm always seeing her dog and she's always seeing mine. And she's probably the one person I can probably just confide anything in because I know that she's going to get it. And I think that finding that one person in your family can sometimes just be enough, who you can just entirely confide in, especially when she can be more understanding than your immediate family. I have a younger sibling, but he is 7.5 years younger than me. There's almost a generational gap between the two of us. And sometimes it's just easier to talk to her than it is to talk to him. So obviously my parents as well, because that's a whole generation too.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes finding just that one person in your extended family, even if you're not in touch with all of them, just the one can be enough.
Yeah. Oh,
and hopefully she's willing to just go on spontaneous vacations with you as well.
Oh, I love that. So good to hear. Yeah. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Just one person makes it enough, right? Because they tie everything together for you, basically. Exactly. And you feel belonged, you feel in touch with them. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about extended family. You just need one anchor and everything falls into place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here today and talking about extended family. It's not an easy topic to talk about. I feel like we've been very vulnerable talking about this, but hopefully it helps to put perspectives into.
I think we've also been careful because we can't just kind of, dump our family drama on the podcast.
Well,
either.
I mean, it is good to be careful, but it's also good to be honest. And I think we have been honest enough.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It was really nice to chat to you. I feel like I learned so much today.
Aw, me too. Thank you so much for being here. And well, next time, Dina will be back.
Nina will be back.
Dina will be back.
One day I'll be back on the family show as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll have to get you back on it.
You've been listening to Altogether, the Family Science Insights podcast, produced by Family Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at fa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargent, and thanks for tuning in.